Namaste and hello everyone. Welcome to Mind Interview, and today we have a guest with us who make the word inspiration fall short. Yes, she is a Wonder Woman. She is an author, business innovator, travel blogger, entrepreneur, public speaker, and also holds the Limca record for the most book reviews written. We can say that she is a one woman army. So without further ado, let's welcome Anuradha ji. Namaste, ma'am. Welcome to Mind Makers.
Namaste and thank you, Ritu, for having me.
As I already told my viewers that you are a Wonder Woman and you have achieved a lot in your life. So we would like to know from where you started all this and when you decided to become an author and also a travel blogger.
So, I honestly did not chart out a roadmap and decide to become a travel blogger. I have been traveling all my life, ever since I remember, since my childhood. And at some point in time, sometime in 2004, I started writing about my travels in the form of a travelogue or a blog. And over a period of time, that became reasonably popular. People started reading it, people started interacting with me, people started giving me a lot more information about the destinations I was traveling to, the destinations they wanted me to travel to. And over a period of time, it became one of the leading travel blogs in India. I started getting invites to visit destinations, to collaborate with tourism boards, hospitality brands, and that's how it is. As far as writing the books is concerned, I've been an avid reader since childhood. I think I used to spend all my pocket money on books, and so I was fond of reading books, collecting books, and anybody who reads a lot of books always has a dream of being an author. Seeing your name on the spine,
Yeah.
to be you want to be an author. So I guess that was a latent dream which was there, but when did it take the form? I don't know. I think when I had a lot of content with me which could form a book, that's when I wrote the book. So my first book was called The Mouse Charmers, Digital Pioneers of India. It was published by Random House, and it documented the journeys of the pioneering digital companies of India. Companies like Flipkart, Make My Trip, Zomato. Some of them are real big unicorns, if we can say. So that was one, which was used by a lot of B schools for their courses on entrepreneurship. Then, as I was traveling and writing about destinations, a lot of destinations I was writing about were getting connected, you know. So I would go to a place, come back and write about it on the blog, everything that I've seen, experienced,
Yeah.
or wanted to explore more. All of that kind of went onto the blog. But when I sat back and saw all those pieces, I saw a lot of connections. So places did not exist in isolation. The places were connected to each other. They had stories linking them. And a very, very basic example is Ramayana. So Ramayana kind of links the North India and South India because there is a journey that
Yeah.
starts in India. It first goes northwards towards Nepal, Janakpur, for the wedding of Sri Ram and Sita, and then it travels south all the way till Sri Lanka. So all these places are connected in a very, very beautiful way. Similarly, all the sites associated with Mahabharat, or all the sites associated with different deities that we know of. So I started putting them together, and a lot of patterns started emerging, and that's what went into my second book, which is Lotus in the Stone, Sacred Journeys in Eternal India. And I saw a lot of threads of continuity, you know. So if you read ancient texts, or if you think about a lot of things that our grandparents, our generations, or generations before them left to us in the form of, everyday wisdom, you could see that still continued. For example, you see that Harappa girl, that small little girl wearing bangan arm and standing like this. the copper bronze Harappa girl, which is now at National Museum in Delhi. When you see that, and when you see, those women in Rajasthan wearing the bangles same way,
Yeah.
that understanding continuity. So I guess I was collecting a lot of such information, data, knowledge, which had to be shared, and that's how the second book happened. In between these two, I also published another book called Unusual Temples of India. These are temples which are very different. They are not regular temples with regular deities. They are temples where deities have been created because they did something. In the documented history, the deities have been created. Some as recent as 25, 30, 40 years back. So I published that book, but that lot of that information is available on the blog, but I kind of put it together in the form of a book. And that book is in both English and Hindi as Unusual Temples of India and as Bharat Ke Anokhe Mandir in Hindi.
So today you are running a travel blog website called Indie Tales and a book
Yes.
review platform named Anu Review. So
Yes.
we would like to know from you like how you handle all these things all alone. As I said, you are a one woman army. So please tell us about that.
So I don't know how I do it, but that's all I know.
Please tell us more about both the platforms.
I'll begin with Indie Tales, which is a better known platform and a more readable platform because a lot more people travel than read. If one person reads, then probably 100 people travel. That's the ratio of travelers to readers. So on the travel, like I said, I've been writing this blog since 2004, and in 2017 we also launched our Hindi website, which is a translated version, but it's an independent site called Indie Tales Hindi, and it's a yatra blog, as we love to call it there. So about 4-5 years back, I saw that a lot of people were searching for Hindi search words, but they were landing up on our English site. So we launched the Hindi website, and I'm very happy to say that we have a beautiful audience in the Hindi domain, which is far more informed actually than the English audience, and they're far more interactive, and they actually ask for a lot of things. In fact, Unusual Temples of India and Bharat Ke Anokhe Mandir happened because they kept asking for a book. They kept saying that the material you are giving us for free is actually worth a book, so put it in a book. In terms of numbers, we reach out. In terms of impression, we get about 3 million impressions a month. We reach out to more than 100,000 unique viewers every month, which is comparable to leading travel magazines in India. And given the fact that it's a single person effort vis-a-vis a huge team that works there. So yeah, it's been quite a journey, and what we have managed to do is that put a lot of focus on lesser known India, put a lot of focus on backyard tourism, which is coming very handy in these times of pandemic, where people can go and explore their own cities, go and drive around their own cities and find a destination to see. There is so much, India being an ancient civilization, a continuously living civilization, there is so much to see, experience, that you can spend your life in one particular village or town and you will still not be able to get everything that you can see or explore or find out about that place. So we're trying to give that window to our audience so that next time they go they look for those things. I'll give you an example. I live in Goa now. For last 7 years, I've been living here, and I have written a lot about the temples of Goa. Now, not many people know that there are ancient temples in Goa, and these temples have a unique history, a unique architecture, and a very unique cultural norms, very unique cultural norms. And they've lived through the Portuguese times. They've managed to survive, so they have a story of survival during invasions, both by the Adil Shah's armies and by the Portuguese. So when I write about them, now I get emails from people saying that, now that I'm coming to every time, now I'm going to come to Goa and I'm going to keep one day aside for temples.
Wow.
Or we didn't know there are prehistoric rock art, rock art. There is a rock art on the riverbed here. So so we try to show them the window. We can't show everything. We don't have the budget or the support or anything to do research on our own. We would love to, but we don't have the wherewithal to do it. But we give people the windows. So next time you travel to a destination, you can start looking for those things. They invariably exist everywhere. So that's what we try to do through In Details. Anu Reviews actually is it's a book reviews blog. It's one of India's biggest book reviews blog. I'm in Limca Book of Records for that. But honestly, I don't really treat it as a very commercial venture. In Details is purely commercial. I mean, we collaborate with a whole lot of hospitality brands, tourism brands, and anybody who has a compatible brand with us. But Anu Reviews was really meant to be my reflections of the books I read. We tend to read the book and then we forget most of the things. We forget what we learned from the book. So Anu Reviews was primarily meant to be my reflections on what I read. So it started like that. But then again, as it happens, once you build a platform, the industry kind of discovers you. So I end up working with a lot of publishers, a lot of authors in terms of discovering books, in terms of sometimes promoting their books or helping them reach out to an audience, doing manuscript reviews, conducting workshops on how to read the book, or conducting workshops on, how to write a non-fiction book, because all my 3-4 books are non-fiction books, and I read a lot more non-fiction than fiction. So I do a whole lot of those activities, but they are more like whoever approaches me for those, I do that. I don't proactively go and promote that. It's still, and both the sites remain very, very sacred spaces for me, because they have, when you look from outside, you may feel that I have created them. But for me, those are the platforms that have given me the platform to reach out to people. Today I'm speaking to you because I had those platforms, or I have the reach through those platforms. And they have connected me to a lot of interesting, knowledgeable people who help me evolve, who help me grow, who help me find information, who help me when I'm stuck at something. So all of that.
This year you have published your 2 books. I would like you to introduce those books to our viewers who haven't read it yet, and also please touch upon the responses you have got from the readers.
Okay. So the book Lotus in the Stone, Sacred Journeys in Eternal India has been published by Garuda Prakashan. And this is a book which, like I said, this is a book which joins a lot of dots. It's my personal journey of discovering India. I started as a leisure traveler, okay, you're working, you have weekends, let's go out and explore a new place, let's see something. But eventually it became a curiosity-driven travel, where you're curious about a place and you travel, and then it became a explorer's travel, where you want to explore a place, so you travel. So it's my personal journey of discovering, and in the process, what I discovered in India, all the living strains of living civilization, what I discovered, how the stories that we read, whether it's in our scriptures or the folk tales that we hear from people, or the general stories that we hear, how they connect the whole of country. There are threads running across the country, joining, north to south, south to north, east, west, everything. If you look at the map of India as it is defined in the Puranas, which is south of Himalayas and north of the sea. So you find so many connections, so many living traditions, and so many unique ways to celebrate the country and celebrate nature. So all that has been captured as a personal journey. I have also looked at lenses like engineering lens. When we look at our beautiful grand temples, we forget that they are also engineering marvels. Look at Kailashnath temple in Ellora. It's been carved top down, and most people think it's an engineering marvel, which it is, because it involves so much. But I wonder at the imagination of the person who saw that solid block of granite and could visualize a temple inside. And once he could visualize, he could obviously get the knowledge and get the action going, and then create the temple as it is. They are marvelous. They are marvels, and we also should look at the fact that they have stood the test of time for thousands of years. Are we creating something like that? Can we take inspiration from them and create something like that today? So I've looked at the engineering lens. I've looked at the feminism lens in this, how in Indian scriptures or the Indian way of living worships as well as defines feminism, and how I have seen that glimpses of feminism in my travels. This thing, and I end up by giving a little bit of guidance on how to decide what is my dharma and which temples should I visit. Because one of the key questions that I keep getting from my audience is that there are so many temples, you obviously cannot visit all the temples, so which temples should I visit? So I have given a little bit of guidance on how to decide and which are the temples that one can start by visiting. So that's about the lotus and the stone. About unusual temples of India, like I said, these are absolutely unique temples. I'll give you example of Karni Mata temple in Rajasthan, which is more popularly known as the rat temple.
Yeah.
Now people go and see the rats, and then they try to see the white rat, because they say if you see the white rat, your wishes come true, which looks like it is true, because I did see the white rat. But what is most, for me, what is more important is the story of Karni Mata. Now, Karni Mata, it is documented that she's a real woman who lived 600-700 years ago, and she lived for a very long time. She lived for more than 100 years, and during those times, she did some acts which today sound like miracles. They are not really miracles. They are like they are acts of extreme courage, valor, and because of her acts, her community was saved.
Yeah.
If she had not done that, her community may not have survived. So because she did that, because of her, the community is living and thriving. She is treated as the Shakti who saved them. So she became the Shakti and the Kul Devi for the Charan community who worships them, and she belongs to them. It's a community temple which belongs to the community of Charan. So there are a lot of such temples across India, very, very unique temples. So in this book, I have tried to give stories of some of these temples. And so far, for the lotus in the stone, I have been getting the feedback that the persistent feedback is that now I am going to see India in a new light. And I learned so much about India, and I want to travel. Incidentally, the book came during pandemic when people can't just pick up their bags and travel. But I hope people, when they travel in a more connected way. So I guess a lot of this generation is traveling far more than earlier generations were. But I hope the travel part gets a little deeper, little intense, and a little more connected. So wherever you travel, you should establish a connection with.
Yeah. So I hope viewers will surely read your. And I wanted to ask you, like you have explored so many temples in India also and abroad also. So what is your observation about them? How you feel that they are different, like Indian temples and the temples which are in abroad?
So are you saying Hindu temples or Indian temples?
Yeah, in Indian temples.
No, Indian temples and Hindu temples are two different things.
Okay.
Okay.
Different thing.
Yes. So Indian temples, yeah, most all Hindu temples can be called Indian temples. Yeah. So what is different? So in India, temple is a concept where we feel it's the home of our deity. It's the home of our devata that we worship. And it's the place where he lives, inside the Garbhagriha, inside the womb. And there is a lot of scientific bit about temples, which I'm not going to talk today. But the fact is that this is where the devata lives. Most people, when they look at the murti, they think it's just a stone murti. No, it is a stone murti till we do pran pratishtha, which is the opening of the eyes of the murti, after which it is a living entity. We treat it as a living entity. So if you go in a temple and if you observe the rituals from morning till night, there are rituals to wake up the deity, there are rituals to feed the deity, there are rituals to bathe the deity, to take them out for a round, to do their worship. Then there is mid-meal, afternoon meal, evening meal, and then finally putting the deity to sleep. So the day of a deity looks pretty much like our day. So the deity is a living deity. In fact, one of the chapters in my book is called When Deities Also Travel. So the deities also travel just like you and I travel. We visit our relatives. So Jagannath also visits his Mausi.
Puri temple in Odisha.
Yes, but other temples also. Most other temples also. Like I'll give an example of Mahalakshmi temple in Kolhapur. She goes to meet Trembuli Devi on Lalita Panchami every year, whom she considers her younger sister. So all the deities, I've given an example from Tamil Nadu where the Varadaraja Swami travels to Sanjeevi Raya temple. So there are these whole travels that happen just like you and I travel. So our deities are living, breathing deities, and we live with them. We seek their blessings every day, every time we visit them. So this concept of living deity, I don't think is, to the best of my knowledge, I'm not an expert on anything other than our temples. So that is what defines our temple. And because it's a living temple, there is an energy. Our ancient temples, especially the ones that we call Tirth Sthala, a Tirth Sthal has an energy associated with it. Is the energy of the land, it is the energy of the water body that flows there, and it is the energy of the deity that is installed there, and it is the energy of all the devotees who go there, pray there. It is our collective prayers that charge the place, which in turn charge us. So that is what our temples are. And you have to be in sync with that energy to feel that energy.
So I have learned that you always travel alone. So is there any specific reason for that?
No, I don't always travel alone, but it so happens that most of the time I end up traveling alone. And the very simple reason, I like to travel a lot. And not many people can travel as much. And, it's very difficult to match dates and times with everybody. Yeah. And now it's very difficult for people to travel with me because I travel like a possessed person. So when I'm traveling, I don't know where I get my energy from, but I am up at the crack of the dawn and I'm out exploring whatever I can till the time it's dark and I have to be back in the room. So that's why. So all these reasons put together: date, time matching, the mode of travel, the way I travel, the kind of places I travel. Because a normal traveler who's a leisure traveler, they want to go to the popular places and be done with it. Chill out, have a coffee, sit out. I don't do that. I like to go and explore, talk to people, find as much as possible, walk around. On an average, I end up walking 15 to 20 kilometers a day when I'm traveling. So a lot of those things.
So, ma'am, we all know that when a woman becomes an inspiration, everybody celebrates her success. But few knew the hard work and sacrifices she has made in her journey to achieve that success. So please share your journey, how you manage with family and work life, and the difficulties you have faced in your journey.
So, see, because I love doing this, I don't see it as a problem or as a challenge or anything. The only challenge is that people don't see it as a profession or a vocation that I pursue, because it's not common. A very simple reason: it's not very common. Whenever you're doing something which is uncommon, which is unusual, it's difficult for a common person to understand, especially your family members, to understand that what you're doing is different, and there is something bigger than money that is driving you to do, right? But even as a woman traveler, I honestly have not really faced any problems except the practical ones, which is like not having access to toilets. If you're driving, if you're on a road trip, it's literally impossible to find clean toilets. These days you find a lot of buildings which are called toilets, but they're not clean enough. So that sometimes becomes a hygiene health issue. Those are issues. There are all other practical issues of not information not being available. Sometimes you travel to a place, you come back and discover that, oh, there was so much more to discover, I didn't know about it. So practical problems are there, but as a gendered thing, except for toilets, I haven't really faced a major problem. And if I go by the verdict of most women travelers that I know of, you'll hear the same thing, more or less the same thing. Of course, with time, you also learn how to behave yourself and how to make yourself comfortable, how to make your hosts comfortable with you being there. So, for example, when I'm traveling alone, I would not really step out after it's dark. I would, but I'm tired by then anyways, because I'm up since 4:35 in the morning.
Yeah.
I make sure that I'm extremely respectful to the hosts, so that they are comfortable with me.
Yeah.
So all those things, but yeah, I mean, if you look at the sacrifices, then I really don't have a social circle. I pretty much exist in my online world of reading, writing, and travel. I know a lot of people, or in fact, a lot of people know me. But in terms of a social circle, I have a very limited social circle, because you're not grounded in one place. Your family, of course, I don't have children, but of course, my husband supports it. Without his support, I won't be able to do even an iota of what I do. In fact, this second book is kind of dedicated to him, because he pushed this idea, saying that you need to write this, people need to read this. If you don't write this, this will go, this will be your observation, which will not reach the people. So family support, especially your partner's support, is definitely a make or break kind of thing. If you don't get that support, it's going to break you. If you get that support, you're going to make it. But having said that, every time you choose an unusual route in life, you have to be prepared for a little for a level of unacceptance, because you don't fit in the worldview of the people. People are used to saying, okay, which company are you working for, how much package are you getting? When you don't have a defined answer to that, and not many people value, unfortunately today in India, not many people value the fact that you've written a book, or you have you've gained so much of information that could go in the form of a book. Books are not really read. I hope people start reading them. Yeah, in fact, a lot more books are getting published now. So I hope people, readers also pick it up. So those are some of the challenges. In being an independent entrepreneur or a solopreneur does come with a lot of challenges. You don't get any kind of support from anywhere, including the government. It's if you don't live in any of the big cities, which is Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, your commercial opportunities are really limited, because most of the commercial work happens in these three cities. And if it is government work, then you can forget about it unless you are based in Delhi or you have a representative in Delhi. So those are some of the challenges which I hope will go away uh, for me or for the next generation of solopreneurs.
It's just amazing how you managed and achieved this much in your
Yeah.
life, like being a woman. So
Uh,
the pandemic was not good for anyone, but as a traveler, it must be hard for you. Like how you managed the lockdown, COVID lockdown.
Actually, my lockdown worked pretty well for me. So, my pre-COVID, my routine used to be 50% of the time I used to be traveling, and rest 50% of the time, you come back, you just unpacking yourself, and by the time you unpack and you washed your clothes and done your laundry, it's time for the next travel. And in between, you have to write, you have to do all your commercial commitments and everything. So that used to be my, a run kind of a thing. When you are traveling, you are traveling. When you come back, you are taking care of everything else. But pandemic ensured that uh, we had this block of time, which was completely up to me, and that's why I could publish these 3 books. All this happened in the pandemic time, and the next book is also my next book, which should be coming in another month or so, is almost ready to go. I mean, it's in the edits and it should be ready to come, and we'll probably have another conversation around that. So, 4 books is not a bad thing in a pandemic, I guess.
Ah,
And all this material I was sitting on, but I was not finding that one
but
block
this
of
must be the
time.
longest time you have not traveled in your life.
Yes, this is the longest time in my life that I have not traveled. Even as an infant, I've traveled more than this. But I guess till now I have used the time intelligently. And I also studied astrology. That was one subject that I have been wanting to study. I'm reading Indian scriptures, so I'm reading Brahman Puran now. So a lot more reading happened, lot more writing happened, lot more studying of the subjects that I wanted to study, but never got that block of time. A single block of time, if I can say, where you can. So pandemic ensured that you can't do anything else. So finish off all those things. Lot of old travels that I had done and not written about, that they were published on the blog. So yeah, I've so far managed to kind of use the time, but now I hope we start traveling again.
Yeah. So all it was a good time for you.
It was not bad. Yeah.
So finally, I would like you to please say something about the importance of traveling and any suggestions you want to give to new travelers, travel bloggers, and wannabe authors.
Okay. See, travel is the easiest way to learn, easiest way to enjoy and learn. When you can read million books about a place, but there is nothing like standing there and being a part of that place. And if you study the biographies of all the successful people, all the evolved people, all the saints and rishis and all the gurus that we've had, you'll find one common thing, and that is travel. They were all big travels, be it Adi Shankaracharya, be it Guru Nanak Dev, be it Vivekananda, anybody, Ramana Maharishi, anybody. You pick up any person you admire and you'll find that they were traveling, and that's why their learning was rooted in experience. When I'm reading a book, I'm not saying don't read books, because that's where you figure out information. But when you read a book, it is somebody else's experience. You don't say it with that much of a conviction. But when you are standing there and when you've seen it with your own eyes, the conviction that it gives you and the connections that it allows you to make is simply amazing. So no matter what you do, no matter what field of study or what field of profession you choose, you must travel. You must have a certain days in a year that you travel, because that's the easiest and the best way to learn. Now on blogging now is a very established field, for anybody who wants to be a blogger. There is ample literature available on the net on how to be a great blogger, good blogger. But I would say it's not an easy profession because except for technology bloggers and maybe a bit of fashion and Bollywood kind of bloggers, not many bloggers make a lot of money. Uh, uh, to sustain yourself, to be to be there for a long run, you must be extremely passionate about what you're working on. Extremely passionate. At the same time, you should be able to manage the commercial viability of the project. Because today, having a blog is a capital intensive activity. You need a fair amount of money if your blog is big enough to even pay for your server costs or your technology costs or for your all kinds of tools that you need to have at your disposal. And if you grow up big enough, you obviously need a team.
Yeah.
And then it becomes like running a business. So get into blogging if you think you are really passionate about something. And when you get into blogging, be very clear whether you are in it for your passion or are you in it for money. If you are in it for money, it's like any other business. You could be selling soaps and you could be selling toothpaste, or you could be selling blogs. So it's like any other profession. But if you are in it for passion, which means you want to leave a legacy in that space, then the field demands a lot more from you. You'll be giving in much more than what you'll receive. So be aware of that. Is what I would say.
So I hope viewers will learn from this a lot. And it was great to have you on Mind Makers. Thank you for giving us a chance to know more about you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Ritu. Thank you, Mind Makers, for having me, and wish you all the best. A very happy 2021 to you and your team.
Happy New Year, ma'am. Thank you.